Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, restoring the death penalty.
I respectfully request Congress to reinstate the death penalty for heinous crimes related to drugs as well as plunder.
Intensifying the fight against corruption.
You are free to investigate. I don't take offense.
Declaring the West Philippine Sea as ours, yet insisting China can exercise its fishing rights.
I was invoking yung traditional fishing rights. It is in that arbitrary ruling. Ayaw lang ninyo gustong tignan.
Hiking teachers' pay and the return of the ROTC.
Itong mga bata ngayon, they're bereft of the patriotism and the love of country. Balik sila dito.
The president lays down his vision for the next 3 years. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian joins us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. President Rodrigo Duterte reveals his plans for the country halfway through his term in his fourth State of the Nation address. Mr. Duterte urges Congress to pass bills reimposing the death penalty, salary hike for teachers, and the return of the mandatory ROTC. The president also talked about the West Philippine Sea by saying that it is ours, no ifs and buts. However, the president said that he will raise the arbitral ruling with China in, quote, due time. Also, no mention of charter change from the podium, but he mentioned this during his press conference after the 18th Congress also opened on Monday. What will be their priorities after Mr. Duterte lays down his vision for the country? Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Senator, always good to have you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you for inviting me, Pinky.
So yesterday we were able to interview you. Pia was in Batasan, I was in the studio, and you said what you wanted to listen to was the president's war on poverty. Okay.
But let me probably give you my points of view on the entire SONA speech. This is really a clear message that the president is going to be very serious with corruption. And corruption is still pervasive in the government system, and it's destroying our society, destroying government itself. And it's pervasive in all levels of government, from local governments to national governments. And the message very clear that the president is going to get tough on corruption, because he feels, and I also agree with the president, that corruption is the one that also is connected to drugs, is connected to poor services, it's connected to poverty. So this is also a root cause of many ills of our society, and he's going to be very serious with that. And I think that is a clear message, because he devoted a lot of his speech, both ad-libs and both on the written speech, on corruption. I suppose in terms of poverty, I think the president dabbled a little bit on some of the anti-poverty programs, especially on agriculture. He mentioned the Coco Levy Fund, which will be used to jumpstart agriculture. It's a good start. Agriculture is a very complex industry, but the mere fact that he mentioned agriculture and he mentioned Coco Levy as a tool to jumpstart agriculture, I see some light in boosting our agriculture in the next 3 years.
But let me interrupt you there. What kind of light do you see when the Coco Levy Fund has been vetoed by the president?
Correct.
In fact,
Correct.
he was talking about, I'm giving land bank until the end of July to find a formula here.
Correct.
Well, isn't that already part of the provisions in the Coco Levy Fund?
Let me segue to land bank. And I think also that's a strong message that the president wants land bank to focus on its core mandate, which is to lend out to the agriculture sector. And he actually made a lot of strong points to even, I think, destroying land bank if they don't perform their mandate. So these are a few of the strategies that the administration will employ to jumpstart agriculture, because agriculture has been the laggard for the last 6 years. And of course, we want to see more detail, because it's a complex industry. But refocusing land bank to lend more because access to capital for our farmers has been a very big problem. If I'm a farmer and I want to buy fertilizer, it's very difficult for me to do that. Then use cocoa levy also to jumpstart the coconut industry, maybe a portion of that fund. All of that will be discussed in detail later on. But the concept is there, and the message is also very clear to our legislators that the President wants to pass a few of the remaining legislation that has not been passed in the first 3 years. These are very difficult pieces of legislation, and it demands a lot of debate and a lot of study. And the President feels that these pieces of legislation are essential to perform his mandate.
But when you think about it, the President was saying that I need an honest man for the cocoa levy fund.
Yes.
He says that to the effect that even he himself would not be able to handle such a huge amount.
Right.
How difficult is it actually to have somebody, I'm sure he has his trusted men, to utilize the funds?
The concept here, Pinky, is to use the funds to make sure that the returns are bigger than what the funds are right now. So there are several concepts that we are talking about. Now, first is to use the proceeds from the interest. He mentioned that he wants to invest it, to deposit it, and use the proceeds from that deposit to reinvest in the productivity of agriculture. But we have to make sure that the productivity is really going to be productive, because a lot of times we invest, but nothing happens. And of course, investing that money is also can be a source of corruption. If you buy expensive fertilizers, if you buy expensive machinery, then you're eventually just wasting the proceeds. So he needs somebody who understands agriculture and an honest person to invest properly.
So somebody who knows agriculture and who possibly can also be a good manager.
Definitely.
Invest the funds, okay.
Definitely. It can be in the cocoa levy fund. The Senate proposal is to come up with a committee to manage the funds.
Right.
But to execute the funds itself on the ground at the agriculture level, you need someone who understands agriculture.
Which would have been perfect. You can get somebody specializing in agriculture, somebody specializing in investments, etc., in that board that will manage the fund.
Correct.
I think it was Secretary Carlo Nograles who said in another interview that he's a little uncomfortable with the fund, number one, because malaki, at number two, because parang he likened it to the road board users fund.
Correct. But at the end of the day, if you compare that to the road board, at the end of the day, the road board were misused. The funds were there, it was collected, but it was misused. The same here, if you will misuse the funds, then nothing productive will come out of it.
Hence, that's why he doesn't want the same fate as the road
Correct.
board
So you need an
funds.
expert in agriculture and an honest expert to execute his agriculture strategy.
So that's one bill that's something the president levied. There's another, vetoed rather. The other one is the security of tenure, which the president did not talk about during his speech. However, he talked about it during the press conference.
But there are silent messages, Pinky. For example, by not mentioning the SOT bill, meaning this SOT has been quite controversial with the business sector as well as the labor groups. And the business sector feels that this will affect their businesses and affect the profitability of their businesses. And I know for a fact that there's heavy lobby to veto this bill, but we feel in the Senate, and with me included, that we worked out a bill, an SOT bill, that will be a win-win solution for both the labor groups and both the business groups. A bill that is flexible enough for the business groups to execute, and it will not hamper on their operations.
All right. The death penalty was one of the first he spoke about when he delivered his State of the Nation address. He wants reimposition of the death penalty for drugs and plunder. I know you had filed a bill on reimposing the death penalty, but
limited to drug lords, which is high-volume drug trafficking. And in my last years as a local government official, as mayor, I've seen drug lords hire the best lawyers to defend themselves. They have the money, and they can hire the best counsel to defend themselves. kahit nasa kulungan na sila, they can still transact and operate their businesses. So my view here is let's go and finish the root cause of illegal drugs, which is the drug lords. That's why my death penalty bill is limited to high-volume drug trafficking, which is the drug lords.
You don't agree that it should include plunder?
I don't, well, that one can be discussed, but I think it will stand a better chance in the Senate if we limit it to high-volume drug trafficking. Because, again, this type of individuals have the capacity to defend themselves. So if they get convicted, I think death penalty will eventually end the root cause of drugs.
I think it's important when you say, Senator, that it's high volume, high level drug trafficking. Ibig sabihin, bulto-bulto
talaga, no?
ng
Bulto.
drugs. Because
Correct.
some are thinking that this is an anti-poor measure because...
No, we're not talking about grams. No, we're talking about hundreds of kilos, hundreds of thousands of kilos of drug trafficking. So I want to focus on that because that is really the root cause also of a lot of our crimes. No, rape, murder, a lot of them are connected to illegal drugs.
All right, we'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today is Senator Gatchalian. So you said, yes, you filed the bill, high value drug trafficking, but plunder, pag-iisipan mo, you're open to it, possibly?
I'm open to it, to discuss about it and see what are the merits of including that. But my focus right now is reducing drugs, hopefully eliminating illegal drugs in our country, and we go to the source, which is the drug lords.
And when you look at the composition of the senators right now, does it have a better chance of making it in the 18th Congress?
Well, looking at the attitude of the Senate last 17th Congress, there were 7 bills on death penalty that were filed. And I think 3 or 4 of them are limited to high-volume drug trafficking. So you can see the appetite for this type of legislation.
Yeah.
And I think my own personal opinion is it stands a better chance if we limited it to high-volume drug trafficking.
Teachers' pay hike. The president talked about that, not just teachers, but also nurses. Let's quickly listen to the president's statement on this. Sabi niya, I don't think it's going to be much, according to the president.
I therefore believe that it's now time for Congress to approve a new version of the salary standardization law. Ngayon na. And to the teachers, alam mo dito, who toil and work tirelessly to educate our young. Kasali na po dito yung hinihingi ninyo. Hindi naman masyadong malaki, pero it will tide you over during this hard time. A little bit bigger than before.
Yes, it will tide you over. Senator Gatchalian also filed a bill regarding... Ang dami
Yes,
ninyo.
yes.
You have Senator
Marami
Gatchalian, Senator Drilon, Senator
Correct,
Pangilinan, Senator Nancy Binay.
Again, you can see the
Lahat.
appetite to support this type of
Okay.
advocacy. And it's
Pero
really
parang
about...
iba-iba yung amounts na
Yeah,
gusto
iba-iba
ninyo.
yung amount. Mine is based on ASEAN average.
Okay.
And our computation is 30% below ASEAN average for now, and eventually raise it in the next 2 years. So our basis is, wag naman tayo malayo sa ASEAN average. No?
So 30% lower.
Lower
Give us an
now.
example, sir.
For example, ASEAN average is about 35 to 40,000, and we're hovering around 27 to 30,000, more or less. No? So, of course, Singapore is paying about 55,000 to 60,000. No? So that's why we were computing not so far around the ASEAN average, but eventually reach the ASEAN average in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, but did you factor in cost of living, prices of goods, etc.?
I think what we factored in is competitiveness around ASEAN. And we want to make sure that we have teachers who are competitive and high morale around this region, because we're now competing with our regional partners here.
So the formula you have is how much of an increase will they have? I understand that you're saying 30% less than the ASEAN rate, but
Correct.
dito sa Pilipinas,
More or
mga
less
magkano?
will increase about 30 to 40% of what from the present rate. And we computed around 60 to 80 billion is necessary to implement that.
Really?
Yes, as opposed to a full increase
Yeah.
of about, I think the others will reach about 120 billion if you allow full increase. But let me go back to salary increases, no? Because
Compensation.
what the President mentioned is salary standardization. So lahat to, Pinky.
Ibig
No?
sabihin
Hindi
lahat.
lang teachers. You're talking about nurses, you're talking about government doctors, you're talking about civil servants. So lahat. And I've heard this talk before na, bakit teacher lang? Paano naman yung mga nurses natin? Paano naman yung mga doctors natin? Paano naman mga civil servants natin? So the concept that is being proposed here is a salary standardization law. And I am very sure that this will be implemented in a time frame. No?
Yeah.
The last one was 5 years. So this one probably about 4 to 5 years also.
The last one was 5 years ago, is that what you're
Parang
saying?
5 tranches siya.
I see, yeah.
Five tranches siya.
Installment.
Installments.
And the next one that the President talked about is the ROTC, also in line with the bill that you
Correct.
passed as well. Let's listen first to what the President said.
Alam mo, pag maggira-gira, 10 out of 10 hindi marunong hawak ng baril. To defend even his father and mother and brothers and sisters. Itong mga bata ngayon, they're bereft of the patriotism and the love of country. Balik sila dito.
If I'm not mistaken, you sponsored this during the 17th Congress.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We sponsored a bill to reinstate ROTC in grades 11 and 12. And the reason for that is only 70% of our senior high school students go to college. So if you want to teach everyone, all of our youth, leadership, discipline, and preparedness, it has to be in senior high school. On top of that, if you remember during our days of ROTC, it was first year and second year college. So that's
Yes.
exactly right. Right now, that's exactly the senior high school, which is grade 11 and 12. So it's the same age
Yeah,
range.
pareho lang.
Same age range. Hindi naman natin binago doon.
Yeah, the problem lang is it's not the term college that's being used.
Correct.
It's grades 11 and 12.
Which
but
is
it's
senior
the same
high school.
age.
It's the same age range.
And-
But the concept here, and I have to emphasize this, is to teach our youth discipline, leadership, and preparedness. These are the essential tools and qualities they need, not only to be prepared military, but also be prepared to, in case of a disaster, and prepared when they go out and look for a job.
Is there a need to kind of review the kind of training that the ROTC they hold in schools now? Because if we were to go back also to our time, ganun ba kagaling siya yung experience ninyo?
You're absolutely
Senator?
correct, Pinky, that we need to reinvent ROTC. Hindi na pwede ito yung ROTC dati.
Na nakabilad ka sa araw.
Correct. We have to reinvent ROTC. And the ROTC 25 years ago is totally different now. Ngayon, the dimension is different. For example, climate change.
Yeah.
We have to include climate change. Disaster preparedness. The President talked about an earthquake yesterday.
Correct.
And that can happen. So we need every warm body, every able body to help out during times of disaster.
And then on the flip side is the supposed abuse and
Correct.
corruption within the ROTC.
We-
Any safeguards for that?
Correct. We built in a very strict safeguard to prevent abuses and to prevent maltreatment of students as well as adults in schools. So we have a grievance committee in all of the schools, and we make sure that within 30 days, the resolution of any complaint should be out already.
In 30 days?
In 30 days. Dapat mabilis, kung hindi, disciplinary action will not be effective.
Tatagal kasi
Yeah.
yan eh. Senator, what are the chances you think of this making it in the 18th Congress?
I think with the new set of senators,
Yeah.
we all know that the PDP group has expanded. I think they have 5 members right now. This stands a better chance. And again, the President has mentioned this. Secretary Lorenzana is very passionate about this. And I feel that this is now essential to give our youth additional skills. These are not, we're not taking up time of our youth, but giving them additional skills to help them in their life.
All right, we'll be taking another short break. The West Philippine Sea, was he happy with what the President said during his State of the Nation address? And other priorities in the 18th Congress. We will be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Senator Gatchalian. You're talking about grades 11 and 12. You are going to chair the Education Committee.
Basic Education
Oo.
Committee.
Hahatiin nyo na ito.
We'll create two because in the lower house, that's the setup. And so we are following the lower house setup. And it just so happened that my experience also is with the local government, which is largely basic education. And Senator Joel, TESDA yung kanyang background.
Correct.
So yung skills namin is really fit for basic education. Senator Joel is higher education.
So how do we understand it? There will be two education committees?
There'll be two education committees, one focusing on basic education, which is early childhood, elementary, senior high school. And Senator Joel will focus on higher education, which is all the colleges, and TechVoc.
And what do you want to focus on basic education?
Okay. I want to put accountability in education, meaning is K-12 working for our people? We added 2 years in K-12. 2 years is adding 2 years is adding cost to our parents. But are we producing the graduates that are employable? Are we producing the graduates that are needed for our industry? Are we producing graduates that excel in our colleges?
Are you saying you're going to reevaluate this,
We have
sir?
to make sure that K-12 is performing as it's supposed to be. I'm for K-12. In fact, when I was in the local government, I really feel that K-12 is necessary to make us competitive globally. But K-12 itself, if it's not executed properly, it's added burden for both government and also the parents. So we have to make sure that K-12 is functioning and being executed properly.
So you're going to take a closer look at it
Correct.
to improve it.
Correct.
Not to...
Yes, to improve it, not to scrap it.
Just to
Pinky,
be
not
sure
not
about
to scrap
that.
it,
Oo.
because
So
I don't believe in
palalakasin mo
scrapping
siya.
it. No? Yeah, but we want to make sure that K-12 is performing, and K-12 is being implemented properly. It's a huge program, again, very complex program because it starts from grade 1 all the way to senior high school. And at the end of that process, graduates who can be employed and graduates who can go to college. So these are the outputs that we need to measure properly and make sure that it's performing properly.
West Philippine Sea, the president talked about that yesterday. Were you happy with his statements? We don't have time to play it anymore, but was it definitive for you?
Well, the president is very clear that he wants to take the diplomatic route in dealing with West Philippine Sea. And he wants to, in his words, confine it to the boardroom or confine it to the conference room when the discussion about West Philippine Sea is being talked about during the cabinet. And that's the direction that he wants. And for me, what is quite satisfying personally is his assertion that West Philippine Sea is ours. No ifs, no buts. And in due time, he will assert, I hope, assert heavily the interests of the Philippines. But for now...
Do you question when due time is, sir? When is due time?
This is a balancing act, Pinky. And the statement of the president is quite strong. This is the strongest statement that I've heard from him in the last 3 years. But the strategy and the route is very clear, that he wants to take the diplomatic route and he wants to balance it at one point, assert it heavily.
Charter change, the president did not mention it during his speech.
Again, a silent message, a silent message that charter change is off the agenda. And I think that's a very good decision because if we talk about charter change in the next 3 years, forget about these bills, Pinky. Forget about all of this.
You will be busy discussing this and, of course, voting jointly or separately,
Correct.
questions before the Supreme
Correct.
Court.
Pinky, just look at the bills that he mentioned. Land use is very controversial. Right sizing is also quite controversial. The creation of different departments is also controversial
Resiliency and water,
because you're now creating new bureaucracy within government. And all of this demands a lot of time to debate and time to study. And if we now inject charter change, definitely all of these bills that were mentioned will be very difficult to get passed.
So you are not for charter change?
I'm not for charter change.
Again,
I'm not
still.
for charter, especially in the last 3 years.
I just wanted to interject this, sir. When the president says that we need a department for resiliency, department for water, Do you think that these are answers to the problems that we are facing, to create another department for these issues?
My hesitation is if you create a new department, you create bureaucracy also, and you make government top-heavy. You want the frontliners to function as quick as possible. But if you add layers to that frontliners, then you it makes it very difficult for them to operate. No? I'm not saying no, but we have to study this very carefully. I'm for a lean and mean and efficient government, but creating more departments will not make government lean and mean.
Unless you collapse the old ones and or possibly put them together in one department. No?
Correct.
Like
The setup
water.
right now, for example, the proposal for disaster resilience is embedded in the Department of National Defense,
Yes.
through OCD.
Yeah.
And that's how it functions right now, so that it's lean and there's a chain of command that follows. But if you create a new set of department, that means it has to interact with other departments to function, and that creates bureaucracy.
Is this the Senate? Is this going to be a more exciting 18th Congress, you think, with the composition now compared to the 17th Congress?
I think a lot of the laws that were mentioned yesterday, stands a great chance of passing. The composition has changed. Again, PDP has more numbers right now. NP has more numbers right now. This combined, they have, I think, 9 members. All of this stands a better chance of passing. But again, we need to be very careful because these are controversial. These are bills that will affect government and services, and we need to scrutinize them carefully.
Senator Gatchalian, sir, maraming salamat
Thank
po
you,
sa
thank
inyo.
you.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.